Hey traders, this is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group with your weekend video. So, as normal, what I like to do on the weekend videos is talk about the overall indices, maybe talk a little bit about international markets as well. We'll talk just a couple minutes about fund flows and what kind of happened last week. Especially, I spend a little bit more time on that when something significant occurs. So I'm going to go in and kind of analyze that, and we're going to talk about last week's option flow and some topics like earnings for next week. So first things first, I don't really do a lot of plugging in these in these videos, but I wanted to talk about a couple themes that we saw last week, and I just don't spend a lot of time on like how correct or how right we've been on some of the things that we've pointed out this year. So robotics and artificial intelligence, all kinds of articles last week in the Wall Street Journal and on CNBC. This is something that we've been talking about all year long. It's on my website. This is a post from all the way back. This is on the front page of my website still because I haven't really changed it because I think it's important. But this was from mid 2017, and we had a webinar, which is I pinned it back on my profile page on Twitter, and we had this webinar on robotic stocks and the inflows that I started to see back in April. And we went through all the different robotic stocks that are in these ETFs back in April, and it didn't it didn't make the press coverage then that we talked about this, but now the media is focusing on it. So what I what I think is, you can look at this. There's two of them. There's robo and there's bots. Keep in mind when the media starts to talk about things that have been occurring all year long, and they've, something that we talked back here in April. I'd be a little bit wary of when they start to get onto this. It could be the last leg up here. Now, I'm not saying I'm not getting out. The Robo ETF is my largest holding in my IRA. I'm not getting out of that, but might be a little bit time to take some profits. Look at how extended we are above the 50-day moving average, and it kind of just goes when the media starts talking about something, it's usually the place to take a little bit of profits. So I'm not advocating to get out of robotic and AI stocks, but for something that we were on to way back here, and they're talking about it up here, that should tell you something, right? So I will point out that last week in this ETF, the bots, it saw the biggest inflow it ever saw, $150 million of inflows, which I think increased the fund size, I want to say, by 15 million, which I added up. Where is this? Excuse me, by 19%. So just a huge inflow that these funds are seeing. And so I wanted to spend a little bit of time with that. And then also, we've been catching just great trades in the room. The alerts that I've been sending out. Again, these are trades that I'm in. I think a lot of people at a lot of different trading rooms, they point out option flow, but they're not really taking, and they're not saying, hey, this is the best way to play this. For example, we saw a really nice trade in MTN last week. It was November options. I explained. Now, if you took the November options, you would have made a lot of money. But what I did was I reconstructed the trade into January, and this was a name that I've been watching for a long time. So the option flow really had a really nice time in this Vail Resorts, something that's been in a big uptrend for a while, but just hasn't had a pullback. So buying pullbacks in uptrends has been a huge place to kind of set up camp for 2017. And that's what we've been doing in the trading room. So, and the other name that we caught and we've had positions on is Adobe. And I actually added to my Adobe position before the news came out in Adobe. So, if you haven't tried our service, our Tribeca Trade Room service, we're hitting the biggest trades every week. So, and we're pointing out this flow. Not only am I pointing out like a whole bunch of option flow, but I take the best where I think are the best signals, and we're really hitting home runs. So not to say that next week is going to be a week of home runs, but I'm catching all the moves. So if you haven't tried us out, you could go to tribecatradegroup.com. I think it's worth Checking out for for a half a month is what we do. Half off the first month. So basically for $70, I don't see why anybody would not try this for a month. Also, if you really don't want to pay, you can email me. My email address is cfromhertz@gmail.com, and I'm happy to hook you up with a couple day trial as well. Um, so I'm going to go through a couple things, but last week, I mean, just to kind of reiterate, we're picking up on some of. Now, I can't take every trade, of course, but the ones that I'm taking have been really good. Another one that we continue to see option flow in is Boyd Gaming. So I'm not in this particular one, but again, it's because I can't load up on everybody's portfolio is different. So if I already have a gaming stock, I can't take several of them, but I'm calling out the flow as well and saying, hey, this would be a trade that I would put on if I wasn't already exposed to that. So I think that what we do that's different than everybody else is, number one, we're putting on these trades, we're calling out this aggressive flow, we're catching the moves. And the names where I'm a little bit overexposed in the sector, I would say, hey, I would put this flow on. So, that being said, check us out again, TribecaTradeGroup.com. Again, I can't think of a reason why you would not try us if you're a little bit more experience in options too. I think it's a room for you to try. Beginners, I do spend some time with beginners and trying to get them up to speed. But our room is really designed for those who've been trading options for a while and really want to see. Confirm what the best trades are on the tape, what the most aggressive trades are on the tape, and then you could see my live positions both in cash and in options as well. All right. So that being said, that took a little bit longer than expected. But let's go into the indices first. So we had a big day on Friday. We were up 50 basis points. One thing I can tell you about this buying that's going on is just a huge amount of inflows that have been going on in the ETF space. So, I think this is partly to explain why things were so well bid on Friday. You could see there was $4.3 billion of U.S. equity inflows on Friday. For the week, $10.7 billion in the U.S. This is not something that we've been seeing every week. It's been the run rate has been like $1 or $2 billion a week. So last week we saw $10 billion. Keep that in mind. That is, I would even say, it's not that I want to go out and make this call because I don't, but it is what it is. When you have a huge week of inflows like this, if you're a contrarian, sometimes this could be known as a contrarian sell signal, right? Huge money rushing in for the week, which I tend to think I use these flows as to say when things are getting a little bit overheated. So looking at the technicals of the S&P, look at the RSI here. So we've been running hot now for a couple weeks. What I've been doing is kind of hedging myself a little bit. So, for example, one trade that we had on was a Russell. I sold some call spreads in the Russell 2000, the small caps. We took that trade off on Thursday. We took advantage of the little market dip that we had in the morning, and I took that one off for a huge winner. So I am right now with the markets as heated as they are, and we're going into earnings season, which is we are in earnings season now. But it's typically very choppy or very choppy part of the year is earnings season. So we're now just getting into, we had a lot of companies report last week, but really this week and next week will be where the biggest and the largest companies and the highest frequency of companies that are reporting in the S&P 500. So I expect personally choppy markets for the next 2 weeks. I put on 2 trades to collect some premium in case we get a little bit of market dip or at least market chop. So I sold out of the money call spreads in the S&P 500. And I did that also with the semis, which I think are also overbought here, massively overbought. So I've been talking about this for a couple of weeks. So I put the trade on on Friday. I had a little bit of puts, full disclosure, in SMH. They did not work. I put them on about a week ago. I took them off for a little bit of a loss. That's fine. Like, this is what keeps me in the game. I don't really want to get completely out of equities here because a lot of positions that I have on have been names that I've bought into dips, like MTN, right? MTN was not when we saw this option flow that happened last week. This is not a name that was overextended. So this is buying a name in an uptrend on a dip. So that's what I'm continuing to look for, not names that are overextended. And if we do, obviously, if we do get a decent pullback, which remains to be seen, it will affect everything, right? I mean, everything gets sold. So there's no really, if you're long, there's no major names that you can hide out and being long, unless gold miners or something like that for the most part. But when the indices, when the U.S. indices get very overbought, that's when I decide to sell call spreads. And again, that's a great defense where instead of just kind of getting out of the overall market and individual names when we're overbought, there's certain trades that you could put on. So I put on 2 of those trades on Friday, right? And that's going to keep me insulated in case we get, again, a pullback or a choppy market into earnings, which I think is what we get. So again, looking at that, we can look at small caps a little bit. They were overbought. They're now not overbought well, they're right around overbought, but you could see that the relative strength index was running really, really hot here. And it basically burned off overbought levels. So could we take another leg higher? Of course. The level that I would watch for IWM to say, that something's going to change here would be 148.53. So as long as we're above value, ride the trend for IWM. Again, I think S&P was way overbought, and the Qs, they're not overbought, but they're pretty darn near close to it. And I think some areas of the market, I will point to this ETF, IGV. This is a little bit different than XLK or the FANG stocks. By the way, this is the FANG stock proxy that I use, FDN. This is the internet ETF. The 4 largest components of this ETF are the FANG stocks. Now, there's also names like PayPal in here and a bunch of other momentum names as well. But the FANG stocks are the biggest weight in this ETF. But look at the performance. Now, this is close to a 52-week high. There's nothing too shabby about that. But look at IGV. Again, what's in this thing, or what's been outperforming? Take a look at the components of these, and this is really where we've been taking advantage of the option flow in names like, I've mentioned Adobe already, but Salesforce, Oracle, ATVI, Intuit, EA, Autodesk, Red Hat. I mean, these have really been your names that have been on fire, absolutely on fire this year. And breaking out all over the place. Autodesk is another name that we've seen some call activity in, 52-week high. Same thing with Salesforce. But IGV is that ETF that has the powerhouses in it. All right, so that's a couple things to watch in some sectors. Let's see. Do I want to get into? I already talked about fund flows, how they're running extremely hot right now. You can see last week, $800 million went into tech, $672 million went into financials. International ETFs, they're continuing to see inflows as well, just they were not quite as hot. They've been pretty steady, running at like a clip of about $2 to $3 billion per week. They just continue to do that. What else? The Chinese internet names, they're going to be reporting soon. A little bit of a dip in that group. Again, you have to watch the Hang Seng. So that's what you want to be watching if you're day trading the Chinese internet names, is watch what the Hang Seng does overnight. That should give you a clue on whether this group is going to outperform for the next day. Okay, so let me get into some option flow because we're already 14 minutes into the video. So, and then I can kind of expand on a couple things. What else? Did I want to cover anything else in ETFs? I think that's good for now. So in the beginning, I'll start in the beginning of last week and I'll kind of go further out. So this, again, is not my favorite time of the year to swing trade. Earnings Earnings season is for me. I could just basically tell you what my portfolio and what my stance is. I generally try to position a little bit lighter and to not carry too many positions into earnings. Now, I do have some trades that are set up for an earnings run, which have been doing very well. I think we've got 4 or 5 different trades on. I think we've got Priceline on. We've got Nvidia on, which has been a home run. We have Amazon, which was a home run. Google was another trade that I gave. Apple and ATVI. I think the only trade that hasn't worked is ATVI, but ATVI has actually perked its way up here on Friday, and we'll see what it can do here. Earnings is still about a week away. And then Apple, we took 2 targets in, and this is why you take targets. We took 2 targets up here, and then it sold off on that report about the iPhone last week. So that one, I would say, if you followed me and took the 2 targets, great job, because the 2 targets were for doubles, and now we're sitting a little bit underwater in our original position, but so be it. All right, so. So basically, I think positioning a little bit lighter. Every trade that hits the tape, you have to look to see if it's when that name is reporting earnings, because I really don't want to take a name, go long a name, unless it's a very cheap setup. But I really don't want to take a name that has earnings a couple days away. So that's what we're doing every day now. Now that we're in the middle of earnings season, looking to see, okay, were these options purchased aggressively? Great. Okay, well, when do they when do they report earnings? Oh, next week, 3 days away. I'm going to lay off, most likely. So that's kind of the exercise that we're doing on a daily basis right now, and that's how it's going to be for the next couple weeks. So that said, most of the trades that I have highlighted here, there's a couple that report earnings, but most of them are swing trades that either the company reported earnings or they're not reporting for some time, or it's an ETF like XLV. XLV, this was on Monday, big call buyer. Now they did take a portion of this trade off in XLV, but you can see it's one of the stronger sectors right now, back up to a 52-week high. So without spending too much time on this trade, I showed this trade to a couple people on Twitter. And even I think, the Nigerians, which I like on CNBC, but they're like, I don't really take these ETFs, because they generally don't move that much. So I don't like to disagree with those guys too much, but there's a trade, if you search my Twitter feed and you look at XLV, the last time that they bought these options, which I believe were at the end of August in XLV, it was a different line, but they bought options for about 55 cents. They went up to $1.60. So the thing is with XLV, and with some of the other ETFs, the implied volatility is so low. It's about a 10 for the XLV. So you're going to get a cheap option because of that implied volatility is down, and you were able to make a triple if you followed the last time they bought XLV options. So, and if doubles and triples are not something that you are not something that you like, if you don't like making double or triple your money, then I would say, yeah, disregard it. But they made huge money the last time, and I saw very little people talking about that big XLV block that we saw back towards the end of August. Again, just look at my put at C Fromhertz and then the $ and XLV, and you could see what I'm talking about. Tech. This is a name that this is an earnings name. This is a name that reports next week, but we've seen a lot of options around this name. So maybe a name to keep an eye on and watch what it does. Maybe if it dips on earnings, maybe something to watch there. ILG, we continue to see ILG options. Here's the MTN trade that I was talking about. This was Tuesday, so it looks like I'm starting with Tuesday. Was there anything that interesting on Monday? I don't think there was. A lot of weekly stuff. And again, that's what we're basically seeing right now is a lot of either this week's or next week's options that are being bought. And again, a lot of the, if you look, like for example, we saw WBA traded on Friday, but you have to look, right? These were bought, these were done aggressively, right? Sweep opening twice. So about 3,600 contracts traded. But look at when they report. So they're buying options for 10/27, which is next week's option expiration. But look at when they report. So 1025. So, there could be a lot of different reasons why they're purchasing their options. Maybe they think they do have a good quarter. Maybe they're also hedging a short position. You don't know. Maybe they are also thinking, it's something could be non-earnings, but it just seems fishy that they're buying all those options right around the earnings date. So you have to keep that in mind with every trade, just as I said. Okay, so MTN. So I do have a video on this one. I'm not going to go. This was the trade of the week last week for me that I had put on for a new trade. But I have a whole video on it, so you could see my. I just reposted it on my Twitter feed. I mean, just a perfect looking trade, and I went a little bit larger than I do. I actually had the November's and I had the January call spread on, so I'm still holding about half that position for January. I'm out of the Novembers, and I took off half the position for January. Now I'm playing with the house's money, so real nice. THC. So a couple of these names, and again, I go over all this in the trading room, but a lot of volume in Tenet Healthcare last week. Had a huge day of 9 point, call it 10% on Friday. So these worked. This was a counter trend trade. We talked about a little bit how you can play this versus support in a downtrend for maybe a quick couple day. Some of these counter trend trades, personally, I'm very quick with holding. If I do take a shot at a counter trend trade, a name that's below the 200-day moving average, I mean, in a really ugly looking chart, what I normally do is take a smaller position, and I don't hang in it for too long. I don't stay in it for more than a couple days. I just think eventually it resumes its downtrend, unless it gets back above the 200. But it's got a long way to get there. So you're going to see that name a couple times from this week because they went in repetitively for THC. ALXN, this is another interesting trade, but they report earnings next week, I believe, for ALXN. So I put some analysis on Twitter on this one. Let's see if I can find it. I think I have to put my name first. And that's not it. But again, I'm pretty sure that they report next week. So take a look at what they did here. They did the May 165 200 call spread. They put that on for a little bit under $5. Look at where they're aiming for. The 200 calls, the upper strike in that spread, again, going all the way out to May. They're thinking that the stock could get back to very close to their high, so 200, and they're giving themselves plenty of time. So ALXN, if you don't want to put this trade on, maybe you just kind of keep this. And again, half of this battle with watching option flow is you can't get into every trade, but keeping some of these names in the back of your mind. Because a lot of these trades, and this is again what we do at Tribeca Trade Group, is we try to get in cheaper than what paper pays. A lot of times we can get into much cheaper, sometimes a third, sometimes 50% off sale from what paper, what the fund originally paid for those options. So keep that in mind. This trade has already gone down because biotech was sold off kind of the end of last week. But maybe watch what this does on the 1026 earnings report, or maybe put on a small earnings trade, thinking that they might know something. But again, they're going out very, very far in that trade. But again, caught my eye. EA, this was after the name was downgraded last week. Somebody came in and bought the November 115, 125 call spread. So dip buyer in that one. More AbbVie, which shot up pretty hard last week. They continue to go after that name. That's been like a best of breed healthcare name. Huge move last week on that trade. So couple other trades in here, but again, I'm trying to keep it kind of narrow. I don't want to go over every single trade. This is what I give everybody midday and at the end of the day. These are only the most aggressive trades that take place. Boyd Gaming, I mentioned this in the beginning of the video, but they continue to go after Boyd. Should be interesting what they do for earnings. But so we'll see. We'll see what they do. This is also next week. They report earnings. Could set up for a nice small earnings trade that I play for next week. By the way, for earnings trades, which I'm not going to go into detail in this video, but I do play. I don't play a lot of names for earnings, but I play select names. You know, as long as you're putting on the right setup, using a call spread, looking at the implied move, looking at the measured move, and you're not investing too much, and you're investing very little for these trades, but giving them a small shot like $100 or $200, it could be very profitable for you. It's a binary. Usually, it's a binary trade. Either it's going to work, and you're going to have a double or triple, or you're going to lose that $100 or $200. That's the way earnings trades work. But if you set them up properly, we did one in ISRG last week, which was basically a double. We did one in PayPal last week. We did one in I did lose one. I did one in IBM. I bought put spread, so I think I lost $120 on that one. But the ones that I'm hitting the doubles and triples in offset the ones that you lose the $120 in. You just have to make sure you don't risk too much. Again, my average trade size is around $2,500 to $3,000 for swing trades. My average earnings trade is about $100 or $150, maybe $200. I risked a little bit more on ISRG because I like the setup. But I generally don't go over $300. So that's the name of the game, and you have to understand that they're binary events. All right, HUN Huntsman. This is another repeat offender. I've been in this trade. I've already taken half the trade off on the big candle move up. It's just consolidating here. So they came back in. I think this was Wednesday. It's still kind of hanging out here, and I like the fact they're not buying the weekly stuff. They're going a little bit further out. They're going out to December and to January, and for this one, so they're looking for a bigger move than something just for a couple of days. It appears to me. These are January 30s that they bought. AABA, this is a name that they continue to go after. There was, I think, out of the Robinhood or another conference last week, somebody had some positive words to say about this name. Am I already out Friday? Wow, I'm already at Friday. I've got a lot of trades in here. One other name I would highlight, which I got long on the dip last week, was Micron. This was also mentioned in the Robinhood conference. Tepper mentioned them. So we already took half that trade off for not half, a quarter of the trade off for profits. But it had this big move up on Friday, and it was bid up pre-market or the overnight market on that Tepper pitching it. So he seems to think that the stock is still very undervalued. So we saw just a ton of options that went up. It was actually much more than 2,500. But it compelled me to get back into Micron even at these levels. So yeah, I would say small dip buy for this one. Micron, again, am I on the daily chart? Yeah, I guess there really hasn't been much of a dip. This was it. Just consolidation up here. So again, for something like that, for me to get back involved in Micron, I have to see a lot of option activity, which is what I saw on Thursday. All right, so other names, U.S. Steel. This is a name that I did not add in options. I added in cash. Why did I add it in cash? Because it just got over the 200-day moving average. We saw some really decent, chunky option plays going on. Now, again, this says earnings in front of it. But look at the name above the 200-day moving average. So this thing, I think a lot of people have been waiting for this name to jump ahead of the 200-day moving average. Well, you got it. So my stop will be the 200-day moving average. That's an easy setup. I call them Tribeca Trade Group setups because they're so easy. Why are they so easy? Because you have your bail point right here. You know exactly where to get out of that, and that's why I'm in cash and not options. This way I can just monitor it versus the 200-day moving average. And then we'll see where it wants to go. And then that stop will be that white line. A couple other names. Boyd, we already talked about this one. Oh, here was also one of my favorite trades that we saw last week. This was yesterday. This was ICE baby. This is the exchange stock. So another name, just like I said in the beginning of the video, I'm looking for names that have dipped in uptrends. So this thing is down 1%. I did not add this trade yet. These are January 60 calls. Let's see when this one reports. It's coming up. It's about a week and a half. So in the beginning of November is when ICE reports. But again, maybe this name runs into earnings. So these are the January 60s. Again, they're not going out to November or December. They're putting on a nice sizable position for January. This trade was, yeah, look at this thing, $2.4 million. So again, this, just like with the MTN, seeing the option flow last week, a name that really wasn't on my radar, nor was ICE. I'm like, hey, look at this thing. It's gone from $71. All the exchange stocks went down about a week or so ago. So this made a 52-week high at 71.24. It's down $5 from here. So a level to watch for me is I want to see a little bit of confirmation. I want to see it get back above this purple line, which is the 50-day moving average, and 67.15. So this is one of my favorite plays from last week that I'm not in yet and I'm watching. Couple other plays. I mentioned the Teva a couple times, and 2 or 3 other trades I'll mention. So Teva, is almost like TH. Sorry, I did not mention Teva. I mentioned THC. This is another name that's in a big counter trend. So how the hell do you trade this thing? That's something that's gotten just obliterated, this pharma stock. You have to pick a line in the sand. I mean, there was some huge paper in there. So what I would suggest is basically looking at the recent low and saying if this thing breaks the recent low, then get out. But look for a bounce in this name, maybe a short-term bounce. Again, for me, counter trend trades, names that are underneath the 200-day moving average, I take a smaller size position than I would in a nice uptrend, right? Because eventually some of these names, they have a bounce and then they continue to go further south. But clearly somebody looking for a bounce in Teva. Sorry, I got Teva and THC confused. But yeah, you can see this is a $2.5 million trade in Teva. Realogy. No, so what was the best performing stocks last week? I know you can't answer me back on this video, but it was the home builders. Look at ITB. This is the home building ETF. Over 60% of this ETF is home builders. If this group is breaking out, the home builders, then why not look at another type of real estate stock, which is Realogy, RLGY. Again, the thing that's tricky with this one, now I did take this trade on Friday because the options were priced around 40 cents. So 40 cents, I'm okay with, losing some of that. I don't know yet if I'm going to hold into earnings, which are about a week and a half. Maybe I just look for a bounce in the next week and a half and then unwind it before earnings. So, but I like that. I like that the whole group is on fire and this name hasn't participated yet. So it's sitting right at the 100-day moving average. So look for it to recapture the 50-day moving average. And then last name to kind of look at, I know there's other names. There's Overstock. Last 2 names. Overstock has been absolutely on fire. Tough to kind of deal with this now. It was up $3 on Friday. Maybe watch for a pullback. Like I said, sometimes you can get into these trades for cheaper than what they're paying for them. So maybe watch for a pullback in that name. And then talk about a name that's flying under the radar that nobody's been talking about. WETF, this is Wisdom Tree. This is another ETF manager. They manage DXJ, which is Japan, which is obviously Japan's been absolutely on fire. I think they have 14 days of the Nikkei going up in a row. I believe it's 14. So this, we originally saw some calls. Again, if you go to my Twitter and you go WETF, they purchased calls for 15 cents. They're now marking 90 cents. It's a 600% profit. This was back on, let's see, what's this date? September 24th. So in a month, they bought September 4th. So basically it was below the 200-day moving, I remember this now, it was below the 200-day moving average. The stock went past the 200-day moving average and did not stop. It's at 1140. They bought a little bit more of these calls. Maybe, again, watch for a little bit of a retracement in the stock, but they went from 15 cents to 90 cents. Those calls, big block was purchased back then. So keep that name on your radar. Maybe another pullback in here as well can get you, maybe into the 20 period moving average, which is this blue line. That's probably where I would look to buy it. But man, look at this thing. All right, so that's the end of today's the weekend video. Those are some names to watch during the week. What you can expect from us, we will be going over and analyzing all the names for earnings. But I think I kind of gave you a little bit of a picture. Also, I highlighted 2 trades in the beginning of the video where you can sell some options premium in case we get a pullback. If you want to see the details of that trade, again, sign up, be a member, and you can see exactly what I put on. I think you'll still have plenty of time to put those trades on Monday. Thanks for watching the video, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Go Yankees.